too short. It's too long for TikTok.
So the kids might catch a little bit of this, but I bet some of the outlaws are going to hear stuff they hadn't heard before. And even some of the family members might learn something about our history here. So I'll make a feeble attempt at this, and then Aunt Alice, who is our historian and scrivener, is I didn't even notice, but yes, maybe she'll correct me in whatever way she needs to. So any name that ends in IAN is Armenian. Armenia is an ancient kingdom that existed for thousands of years until taken over by the Ottoman Turks in, I think, the 16th century.
1453.
1453. Thank you, Matthew.
Wow.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Matthew Keshian.
So at that point, Armenia, which was in what is now Eastern Turkey, was conquered by the Ottoman Turks and was forced to be Muslim. And modern Turkey today and modern Turkey in the last 2 centuries is a Muslim country in which Armenians lived as a Christian minority. But Armenia was the first Christian nation. That is the first nation to adopt Christianity as a national religion, and that was
the first church, right?
something like 301 A.D. You might remember that Paul's missionary journeys began in what is now Asia Minor or Turkey. So he went to Ephesus and all these places that you read about, so the Armenian people were part of the ones that were evangelized by Paul and converted to Christianity early on. So Grandma and Grandpa Keshian were both living in Armenia, which was at that point part of Turkey, the modern nation of Turkey, and there were a number of pogroms or discriminations against the Christian minority and the Armenians in particular. And those began in the 1914 or 15. They heated up again in 1819. They heated up again in 1920, where the government of Turkey, thank you, Ezra. The government of Turkey actually encouraged the rounding up of Armenians, just like the Jews in World War II, and either march them into the desert to die, or put them in camps to die, or kill them outright. And so Grandpa was he was a college professor, spoke 5 languages, was the mayor of a town called Hadjin, Hadjin, and you could actually look at a website called hadjin.com, Hadjin, for a little more flavor of this. But he was the mayor of this town called Hadjin, which was a little north of what is now Adana, Turkey. It's in the middle south part of Turkey, and just about an hour from Tarsus, where the Apostle Paul grew up. And their house was known as their last name was Keshian, and their house was known as one of the first houses in the whole area that had windows.
Yeah, that's right.
Glass windows, excuse me. Yes, Grandma was also college educated, which was unbelievably unusual at that time for women in the Middle East. And she
Anywhere.
anywhere really. And so she was educated at Euphrates college. You know, the Tigris-Euphrates River runs through this area as well as modern-day Iraq. So that's where she was educated. And during these discriminations against the Armenians by the Muslim Turkish majority, because they were nationalistic, and Armenians were an educated population that also was had the best businesses and everything else. There was some tension for a number of reasons. The best rugs. There you go. So Grandpa's father was killed by the Turks, and Grandma's father, when she was 6 years old, was put in a house, and it was burned to the ground by Turks in one of these wars. Her two brothers, her mother, and stepfather all were killed by Turks when she was in high school.
Wait a minute, what happened when she was in this burning house?
He was in her father.
Her father was in a burning house that, and she had stories that she would tell us when we were young of watching them gather all the pastors in their town, put them in a house, and burn it to the ground. Lock them in. So they moved from that town of Hajin when it was leveled by the Turks to Istanbul. And this is where folks that we know come into the story a little more. Help me with this, Aunt Alice.
If I can.
Jim, the oldest in the family,
Melly.
Melly, the oldest in the family, was born in Istanbul.
Mm-hmm. Which is today Constantinople.
No, today it's Istanbul. It was Constantinople. Yes, good. Yes. Jim, next, was born in Adana, closer to their home place. In Armenia, yes. Aunt Lucy was born in Cyprus. Why Cyprus? Because when they left Armenia during World War I, and World War I was a time when there was this particular destruction of Armenian villages and things, and rounding up of the Armenians and driving them into the Syrian desert and killing them in all kinds of ways. Grandma and Grandpa escaped, and they have wild stories about that I won't go into, but they moved to Cyprus, where Grandpa was the head of an Armenian orphanage for Armenian orphans that were orphaned because their parents were killed by the Turks.
I never heard that.
So that was in Cyprus, and we've talked to folks in the last couple years who've said, "Oh yeah, the place is still there. We know exactly where it was." To Cyprus. Good, yeah.
Didn't know where to look.
The orphanage is still there, and Grandma, even when she was living with us when I was growing up, would have letters come to her from Australia and England and all over the world from these kids who she had sort of raised, who are now living in different places. So in Cyprus is where Aunt Lucy was born. I know your heads are swimming with some of these people, but we'll put them in context in a minute. Then they were trying to get into the U.S., but weren't allowed originally because there's a quota on people groups. So they went to Buenos Aires, Argentina, and lived there for a time, which is where Aunt Alice was born 99 years ago. 99 bottles of beer on the wall. Then,
And what did they do in Buenos
They
Aires?
got the quotas. Oh, you want to tell them the story about Lucy wasn't going to be
That hasn't
wealthy?
we're not there yet.
then when they were that they were finally allowed to come into
The quota.
the U.S. through Ellis Island in New York in something like 1923.
She was born in 23.
Yeah, she was already
It's
born.
been later.
That'd be
I thought Bob was born in 23. Wasn't
No, Al
Jerry
was
born in
25.
23?
Mom was born in 23.
Oh, you were born in 23. Thank you. Okay.
She's been telling us.
Anyway,
25, right?
Grandpa brought a case in the Southern District of New York federal court against the U.S. government
Yep.
because, help me with this. What,
Well, there was a quote. Lucy was traveling on a British passport, and the British
French passport.
quota was full. So the rest of the family could come in, but not Lucy. Well, that's absurd. So Grandpa, being the activist that he was and a pain in the ass, had this case brought up. So then they allowed us all in as a family instead of individual passports.
and he won the case. So that it changed the immigration law with regard to families coming in with
And
children,
I have the
right?
letter at home.
That's still,
And you have the letter on that.
Yeah, and
It
there's a
still
very,
exists today.
if you Google Keshian versus the United States, I think
Is
it
it
was the
Keshian or
United
is it
States.
Keshian that you need to?
Well, I
It was
used
Keshian because they changed their name at Ellis Island to
It was
Keshian to
Keshian.
make it more
American.
How about that, huh?
I think, because I've got the whole thing in my files from your dad.
Yeah.
I think it was Keshian versus the United States, wasn't
Good.
it?
I think so. And let me back up. Grandpa,
Cliff notes to this story, or
What's that?
Are there cliff notes?
yeah, there needs to be. Grandpa was also inscripted into the Turkish army during World War I.
Holy, no way.
And so he
Got out of that.
he somehow was able to get out of that. But in Adana, he would bring his bread that he got every day for his rations and give it to Melanie, who was a baby living in a refugee camp at the time.
My Aunt Melanie,
My grandma.
her grandma.
So, fast forward, they moved to the U.S. through the Ellis Island to Brooklyn, Bay Ridge,
Yep.
and where everybody lived at one point, Brooklyn, and went to school there. Grandpa was working with his brothers, one of whom was exporting carpets in the Middle East, one of whom was in London, and then they had an office in Park Avenue in New York selling Oriental rugs. And today, if you go in Washington up Wisconsin Avenue to Chevy Chase, there's a Keshian Carpets, and that's his brother's,
Mark.
his brother Mark's grandson is running that store right now, and they've yeah, I wish.
I went to introduce myself and get a rug, but it was closed.
but they've supplied rugs to the White House and all kinds of
But there's also
stuff.
a Kish rug in Memphis.
And there's a Kish rug in Memphis because a
Zavin.
nephew named Zavin of Grandpa's,
Yes.
they took in as an orphan in the U.S. who lived with them, lived with you when you
We
were.
always had somebody living with
Yeah.
us. That's why I'm living with.
That's why you're living with your people. Yeah, that's right.
I didn't know that was right.
So Zavin moved to Memphis, and he opened up
Kish's rugs.
Kish's Rugs. That's still operating, right?
Yes.
So,
We never bought a rug from him.
We did. We bought one from Circus.
so Melly, the oldest, Aunt
Yeah.
Melly,
My name
had 2 daughters and a son. Linda, Jane, who has COVID, and Jim, who paid for dinner tonight.
Not even here.
I'm not even going to go into the kids, but you all can figure you figured it out by now probably. Okay, and so Melly married
Frank.
Dick Rafaelian, who was
Beer.
famous in all kinds of ways, but apparently was he was a like one of the 3 horsemen of the apocalypse as a wrestler in college.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yes. I do.
Okay.
He also, I think, rode his bike from New York to Philadelphia once to go on
see
a date
girl,
or something.
and it wasn't Grandma. She always used to say.
Which was very, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So he was an engineer. He worked for Ballantine Beer and a number of other places. The second in the family tree was Jim. Jim Jim moved to Memphis, Tennessee, as well to work for Zavin, and changed his name from Keshian to Bishop because he thought it would fly better in the South. And Bishop is the translation of Keshian, because there was a line of Christian bishops in Armenia that were in the family.
And that's how you met?
So Jim met his wife there, Sue, and married her, and they had a daughter named Joan Webster, now Webster, who was going to come on this and then had to back out at the last minute.
Yeah.
But while she was in utero, he was in World War II, and he was a fighter pilot, and he was shot down over New Guinea. And we actually have some pretty extensive records that show he and his 5 or 6 crew members were in a life raft for a while in the Pacific Ocean waiting to be rescued, and he had been shot in the stomach and bled to death, and they threw him overboard.
Well, that's
During that time.
rude. They did a burial at sea.
Yep, sorry, they
But it
did a
wasn't
burial at sea.
It was not a fighter pilot. It was a bomber.
A bomber.
a
Yeah,
B-24.
that's right. A B-24 bomber.
On a
That's right.
volunteer mission.
Yeah.
There's only 10 people in a bomber.
Is that right? 10 people in a bomber?
Right.
10.
Okay, I believe you.
Depends on the bomber.
The next one, Lucy,
Yeah.
married Sam Mardian, who grew up in Pasadena, California, and was a classmate in grade school on up with Jackie Robinson,
Wow.
and actually stayed good friends with him and was in touch with his widow after he died and those kinds of things. Sam with his brothers, had a construction company in Phoenix that built, among other things, Sky Harbor Airport.
Yep.
And he was the mayor of Phoenix in the 60s. His brother was an assistant attorney general during the Watergate era and was actually indicted in Watergate.
Robert C.
Robert
Martin.
Bob,
Mardian,
yeah.
Bob Mardian.
And wasn't he assistant to the Surgeon
He's in all
General?
the president's men.
Not the
One of the
Surgeon
pictures in the
General.
middle.
To the attorney general,
Attorney General.
John Mitchell.
Attorney
Yeah,
General.
the attorney general, John Mitchell. So their kids who are not here are Sam Mardian, Jim Mardian, Doug Mardian, who's died this year of COVID, Carol Mardian, who toyed with coming until the last minute to be with us, and Steve Mardian, who's my age.
He's not that old.
Yeah,
So
he
you're
is.
as young as he. I didn't know that.
Next in line is Aunt Alice. And Aunt Alice married a dashing military guy, also from Brooklyn,
A foreigner. He was a foreigner.
named Marshall McCabe. It was a little bit of a scandal in the family because he was an Armenian.
He referred to him as a foreigner.
Wasn't a prearranged marriage?
And you all know the story there, but we had the honor of being at. He was a career Army doctor. He was in charge of Europe. Help me with this. He was in charge of.
Mom will get mad at me.
The medic thing.
He was in charge of
Europe.
Europe.
Health Command Europe and Health Command United States.
Yeah. So big stuff. He was a 2-star general, a major general. And for those of you who were honored to be at his funeral, it was unbelievable. There were jets flying overhead and carts driven by teams of horses, and it was a beautiful ceremony.
They presented the flag.
They presented the flag to Aunt Alice. So just wonderful, wonderful. And then the runt of the family was Jerry. That was my dad.
Oh, Pop.
And he was he was a little twitchy, but a wonderful man. He was a little nervous, but a wonderful man.
Yes, I have to use it though.
So,
Reed doesn't. My brother Jerry was a little twitchy, and Reed does a great
Boy,
imitation.
so one of the things that I've reflected on over the years is that I have a Pop. Yes. Oh, Pop married Dorothy Jost, another Odar, non-Armenian. A little scandalous again, but I guess it worked.
I'm not so sure.
And Lynn and I are the product of their marriage. Yes.
Long-time educator.
And he was he had a PhD in education, so he was an elementary school principal. And in the summers, he taught it in colleges in different places that allowed us to actually live in different places around the country, which was fun. Yes, Ryan?
Don't you not do school in summer?
No school in the summer. Back then, we didn't go to school in the summer.
When did he? When
Oh,
did
he would teach in colleges in the summer. People would take summer courses. Yeah. It's a great question. So one of the things that I've reflected on is that I came to faith in Jesus Christ when I was in high school, but I don't think I gave as much credit as I should have to Grandma, who would pray for not only me but every one of her grandchildren every day. And so, I think that bore fruit that we don't even know about and won't know about for many years. But she was a wonderful woman who lived with us at times, lived with the Rafaelians at times, and lived with the McCabe's at times. And it was always a treat. It was always a big treat.
And made a mean pot of oatmeal.
But Rich,
Yes,
that needs to be continued. The praying.
yes, it absolutely does. Yes. So we need to keep the flame alive, no question. And it's a rich, deep heritage in the midst of a hostile world back then that they paid for with their lives, many of them. So I have all kinds of good Armenian stuff that I could read to you, but I think we've gone way long on that. And the only thing I'll say is I have I know Melanie did a better one, but I have a chart we can look at. And Lynn has some fun pictures that she'll put out on the dining room table afterwards of some of us growing up with Grandma and Grandpa. And so I would love for us to honor Aunt Alice, first of all, for 99 years of life, and for being the last remaining person of a wonderful generation that has given us so much.
Being alive.
And I'll just, and I just, yes, Dave.
And I mean, it's funny because I think Naomi and I were talking about how it's so interesting how you have the youngest at less than a year tonight to have a century of a decade.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah. And so I just thought we'd open it up for just a couple of minutes for any remembrances that you have about Aunt Alice. And I'll tell you that I remember so well her from the trips that they made to New York and New Jersey to visit the Rafaelians and the Keshians with the whole crowd in a big station wagon.
Yeah.
I remember going out to Phoenix when they were living there, as along with the Mardians. You were stationed there, I guess.
No,
right?
Dad was in Korea.
He was in Korea. Yeah, he was serving in Korea, so the rest of the family was there. And I think I was about 3, but I have some vivid memories of like a seesaw thing with seats on them in your backyard.
That was the backyard.
And one was a plastic seat, which was really nice and smooth, and the other one was wooden, and you'd get splinters on it when you sat in it. I don't know. Do you remember anything like that?
Yes, and Grandpa playing backgammon in the backyard with Uncle Leon. Uncle Leon.
I remember
And-
going to feed the horse with carrots down the street.
Yes, you're right. Exactly.
And then I have so many good memories. And then I remember when they moved to Alexandria, going to Mount Vernon for the first time and running through the sewers with Marshall and Allison. And then when they were stationed in Heidelberg, our family went and visited and just got the royal treatment there. Allison was in high school dating some guy there. College.
Dating Green Bay.
No, you were dating some other guy there.
It was Joey.
No, that's not true.
It was Joey.
Never mind.
Turn off the video.
Turn off the video. So, I don't want to put pressure on it, but other memories of Aunt Alice that anybody wants
Can I
to?
do one of your dads?
Sure.
When you and Marshall came home from the sewers?
Yes.
And Goggy, everybody was going, "Oh, this is so fun! This is great!" And your dad, you talk about twitching. Oh my God, his kid had been in the sewers with my brother. I mean, the ultimate twitch.
Ninja Turtles.
I'm gonna take you one step.
My
I'm
favorite
afraid everyone's gonna fall over. It's the biggest nightmares of you all.
father was a little hard.
Yeah.
Death
She
tragedy.
loved to make oatmeal.
Yes.
And I remember one Christmas we had 3 in-laws, Marshall's wife, Melanie's husband, and Allison's whatever he was at the time. And they used to say, "It's your turn to eat the oatmeal." And she came down and said, "Those boys love my oatmeal." They're fighting over who had
San Antonio. I'll never forget.
right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was it. That was San Antonio, yeah. That's it.
Well, I don't have any memories of this family because I wasn't there, but I want to thank you and Nancy for all the work you did to put this on.
Yeah.
As an outsider of the family, I've never seen another family so coherent and so loving, and it's just been a really pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much.
And I would also like
Well
to say,
done.
if you want to see some really old Armenian rugs, come visit Melanie. We've got a boatload of old Armenian rugs that are fantastic.
Okay, so I want to tell one really quick
Good,
story.
yeah.
Right? So we were in Canada, and I wanted my first signed Armenian rug. I was on this quest for Armenian rugs. So we go into this place in Toronto, and I said, I want an old Armenian rug signed. And the kid that's running it goes, well, and he's bringing me all this young stuff. And I said, no, you don't get it. My grandfather was a rug dealer. I want a signed Armenian rug. And all of a sudden, like 5 minutes later, out of the back comes this old guy. And he wants to know my whole story. By the time we leave, we have our first signed Armenian rug that he brought over with him, his wedding pictures, an Armenian calendar, and the boat, what do you call it?
Manifest.
Thank you. That Grandma and Grandpa
From
were
Ellis
on the
Island.
same boat.
Wow.
No,
way.
over to Ellis Island.
Yeah.
And so
Wow.
that's my first.
I carried the damn thing back on the airplane.
Yeah, they told me. Yeah.
On my shoulder.
So now I have they're really really cool or signed. I know. But anyway,
That's
that was a
great.
great story.
Yeah.
But I would never have gotten it.
Easy, okay.
Your dad, when I met her, every birthday, sent me a card.
Yeah.
Every time, and so did you.
And it was from the Witness Protection
Oh,
Program. They had like letters here and there that he cut out.
Yes.
From the typewriter.
Back in like,
This is spectacular.
all July, January 14th.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. Yeah, Lynn.
I have a gazillion memories, but one thing I wanted to say that's making me think, because there's such a variety of everybody here, Grandma, who instilled so much really in all of us, even those of you who don't know her, didn't know her, she loved our in-laws, whether they were Armenian or not. She loved everybody in our family, and she would just talk about them as though they were one of her 5 children. So it was really beautiful.
But how did your mom always know every single birthday? It was the weirdest thing. I mean, she never missed a day.
Yeah, she was good at that, and Pop took over that when she died.
Yes,
that was
she
his
did.
legacy.
Yes, it was.
Right.
But she loved all her in-laws, and she used to talk about, you know, Larry and Reed. She loved everybody, Grandma. So she was very thankful to everybody who you all married.
Yeah, she was such a special lady,
Oh, and she
and
would have been so
I wish
happy to see
everybody
these children now.
could have known her.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
she had great stuff to say all the time about Armenians, especially. Like, she would say, do some of you remember the detective show Mannix?
Yes, he was Armenian.
She would say, that Mannix, he is very brave. You know, he's Armenian.
I came in one day and she was looking at a book, a medical book, and she had like highlighted in the back all the Armenian names. Every person that was referenced in the book that was Armenian,
Yes.
she had like highlighted.
Yes.
She was,
There you go.
yeah.
Peter
Dave.
Paul,
And another
those
one,
candy
not part of the
bars
family,
with
but I hear
almond
stories
joys.
from,
Were they Armenian?
They were Armenian. We always had them in the house.
They had a hamster
Oh,
that Grandma almost killed. And she would call it Booty, little Booty. She was giving it chocolate.
remember she'd pick our cat up wrapped in
With newspaper. She wouldn't touch the cat. And then, you know, Mom and Dad had a parakeet, Caduceus, that flew free in the house.
Right, in San Antonio.
Yeah, so when Grandma lived there, she would put a napkin on her head, and Caduceus would land on her head.
Yeah.
We have pictures of Grandma like sewing with this bird on her.
Anyway, she was a special lady.
She was. And the last thing I'll say is I think the Keshian extended clan of women are way hotter than the Kardashians.
Everybody wants to be Armenian. They're the Kardashians.
Yeah. That's all I have for you here.
Thank you.
I just want to know if what more can Aunt Alice add?
Yes, great.
Comes to mind.
Anything you want to add, Gogs?
Yeah, and what did I mess up? And any history that you need to fill in for us?
No, I just love you all. And it's just great to have you all here. And I just don't get me weepy. So
Love you.
love you.
So, Rich, maybe a prayer or something for Dougie?
Yeah,
I have
great
to say
idea.
I love
Yeah.
you all.